So why doesn't your blog actually work? Why won't your podcast grow beyond 500 listeners no matter what you try and do? Why does your CEO keep complaining that her thought leadership never seems to land on the front page of the Wall Street Journal? Each and every one of those is an operating model problem dressed up like a content strategy problem. Or as I've been saying for a long time now, in most marketing organizations, content is everybody's job and nobody's strategy. Well, let's talk about how to fix that. Hey everybody, welcome back to Rose-Colored Glasses. I'm Robert Rose, a marketing consultant, chief strategy advisor to the Content Marketing Institute, and general troublemaker. This is episode 2 of our 4-part May series on the end of campaign-first marketing. So last week I made the case that modern content-led marketing, well, it's now kind of a merger of owned content, paid distribution, and earned audiences. And making that strategic case, well, that was the easy part. I mean, last week it was pretty easy. I'm not easy, maybe that's the wrong word, but easier said than done for sure. Building the operating model that can actually execute on this kind of idea, that's the hard part. And I know because that's largely what I've been doing at Seventh Bear with clients for the last year, for the last 10 years. And it's the part most marketing organizations are still not built for. That's what today is about. The architecture of what content-led marketing organizations actually look like what changes in the planning cadence, the team structures, the measurement idea, the places where a new operational model either holds up the rest of the marketing house or it doesn't. So let's get into it. So in my consulting practice, I see the same pattern over and over. The clients I'm working with right now, they're not running better campaigns. They are reorganizing slowly, sometimes painfully, around what we're calling a media-led backbone, a shared content engine that feeds multiple channels, every audience, every function in marketing. But before we get to what that looks like, let's talk about the actual problem that we're solving. So my Seventh Bear colleague, Kathy McKnight, she's got a great line for this. She says that most marketing teams are running a 2026 marketing ecosystem on an operating model that was designed for 2016. The teams aren't broken, it's just outdated. And the gap between what content-led marketing requires and what the org chart can actually deliver is wrapped up in the one word, well, okay, it's 2 words actually, 2 words that send cold shivers down the marketing leader's back. Those 2 words? Change management. Yes, the dread of actual structural change in the organization while still trying to keep the performance marketing lights on, it is the single biggest reason that any company is bad at content. And to be super clear, the people aren't bad at content. People know how to do it. The people are talented. The business just isn't structured to let them do it well, so the business becomes bad at content. Most teams are still running their content like a series of campaign-shaped projects, right? Produced only when needed, scattered across channels, owned by whoever requested them in the moment, measured by whoever ran them in the moment, the last campaign that needed them. Some teams have content calendars, most have a publishing to-do list, and almost none have an operating model. What they need is orchestration. So most of these organizations, yes, they do have a content operation, right? They've got that CMS, sometimes 3 of them, because the marketing team and the digital team and the brand team, well, they all pick their own tool. They've got a workflow tool. In fact, they probably have 3 of those as well, and a Kanban board that everybody looks at. They've got a content calendar that's really a to-do list, a marketing calendar, yeah, it's built on hope and compromise, and a PR and comms calendar that someone updates on Mondays of every month that end in Y. And don't get me wrong, the people know how to operate within that system, right? It's mostly a remarkably efficient system for getting individual digital assets out the door. These teams can produce ebooks, blog posts, press releases, sales decks faster than ever, and AI is making that faster than ever. But what they don't have is orchestration. All right, orchestration. Yes, here we go. Another buzzword, right? Isn't this just another marketing orchestration, content orchestration, a buzzword? How is that different from having a content operation that works? Here's the distinction. Most everybody has that content operation, as I just mentioned. In fact, they probably have that content factory. They might even call it a content factory, though they probably give it some fancy term called the studio or something like that. This is the content operation that everybody in the marketing organization follows their own playbook against those campaigns, those initiatives. Everybody's got their own way of operating. What they don't have is a shared editorial logic underneath all of those digital assets. The planning rhythm, the audience first decision tree, the distribution strategy at the front part of the strategy, not the last thing considered, the measurement model that values the work over time. Without that backbone, content is everybody's job and nobody's strategy. Orchestration is the layer that makes the backbone real. It is the planning cadence that asks what audience we're serving this quarter before we do and go to what we're publishing. It is the editorial structure that decides what gets made and what doesn't. It is the integration of distribution into editorial planning, not the downstream channel decision. It is the measurement model that tracks influence over time. It is a budget allocation that treats audiences as infrastructure, not the side project of funnel management. Now, operations is execution. Orchestration is the operating system that decides which of those executions are actually worth running. Now, to make this concrete, we can see this shift happening across 5 dimensions of the marketing organization. So 1, planning and prioritization cadence. So operations runs on launch windows, right? Orchestration runs on continuous editorial cycles. The opening planning question shifts from what are we launching next to what audiences are we serving and what is each editorial property earning us with them? Shared, owned, earned. And then 2, team structure, operations groups, people by channel, right? Operations group, they all organize those people, right? PR, demand gen, brand, social, each running their own little playbook. Orchestration starts to group people by audience and outcome. Kathy says this the cleanest when she says you should redesign your roles around value streams, not the channels. The PR lead isn't running PR campaigns anymore. They're running earned distribution outcomes for specific audience portfolios. 3, measurement. Operations measure campaigns, last click attribution, CTRs, MQLs, conversion per push. Orchestration measures cumulative influence, content and asset value over time, audiences compounding in value, pipeline contributions 6 months from now, retention impact. The first measurement model treats every asset as a transaction. The second treats them as durable intellectual property that earns value over time. 4, budget allocation. This is the most diagnostic of them, by the way. The operations allocates against campaigns or projects or initiatives. The budget line item is the project. When the project ends, the budget ends. Orchestration allocates against audiences and properties that exist on a continuous basis. Newsletters, podcasts, communities, distribution partnerships, audience treated as infrastructure on the balance sheet, not a project spend on the P&L. If your annual or quarterly planning still maps to campaign cycles or initiatives, then you know the operating model is still siloed operations. And why? Because it has to be. Otherwise, nobody can report on whether or not every campaign or initiative was successful. Last, that gets us to 5, executive reporting. Operations reports campaign performance, the monthly deck, MQLs by source, conversion rates by channel, ROAS by program. Orchestration reports on editorial business review, quarterly, audience health, asset performance over time, share of voice in targeted communities, distribution velocity, contribution to pipeline movement and retention, revenue. Reporting differently changes what the team starts to optimize for. We get what we measure. So how do you actually make this shift? Like, how do we do this? Well, there are a number of, let's call them moves to make on your people, process, and technology chessboard, but just a couple of them in roughly this order. So the first one is appoint an editorial council, and maybe, depending on the org, a chief content officer as well. I know that some of you are thinking, well, a council, wonderful, another committee, right? But no, the instinct is to put one person maybe in charge of content authority, hire a CCO and hand them the keys to the kingdom and hope for the best. In most organizations, that alone does not just work. The right structure is a governance body, a council with actual cross-functional decision rights over editorial direction. Kathy calls this the clarifying the RACI without getting into all the ick that the RACIs usually provide. This accountability is shared across functions. There is no single owner. Move 2. Redesign then the roles and responsibilities around the outcomes, not the channel. The function names, of course, can stay. The accountability changes. In other words, the PR lead is now responsible for earned distribution outcomes against specific audience portfolios. The demand gen lead owns pipeline contribution from a defined account list. The work is the same. The accountability has been redirected from activity to outcome. Then move 3. Document the playbook explicitly. Orchestration only exists if it's written down. Editorial values, standards, planning cadence, intake criteria, distribution briefs, governance decisions, all of it. Most teams have most of this knowledge in somebody's head, usually the head of one person who has been there 9 years and is 2 years from leaving. Get it on paper, get it on documented. The first version, of course, will be wrong. Write it anyway. The act of documentation is what turns an operating culture into an operating model. Then move 4. Replace the campaign reporting deck with an editorial business review, a content business review. This is the executive-facing ritual that makes orchestration visible to leadership. Quarterly, audience health, asset performance over time, distribution metrics, pipeline contribution, reporting on the right things changes what the team optimizes for and what the executive team learns to expect. Now, I want to be super clear about what these 4 moves are not. They're not a teardown or a transformation of marketing full stop. I'm not suggesting changing anything that's working just for the sake of changing it. The elements of campaign-based marketing that are working for you, keep them. Performance-based marketing is not going away. Demand gen is not going away. Brand campaigns are not going away. Product launches are not going away. This is new work, an addition, an evolution of the marketing approach, not a replacement for it. The teams doing this best are 6 to 12 months into the work, not finished with it, but working toward a goal, a solution, an objective. And the architecture starts to take shape from the very first quarter the editorial council starts to meet. It's exactly the work that Kathy and I work on with clients at Seventh Bear, auditing where the operating model actually is, designing the orchestration framework, helping leadership teams sequence the change so it doesn't blow up the work that's already running. And if you're heading into this kind of transition and want help thinking it through, well, the link is in the description to the full post, and I'd love to talk to you. So we come back to where we started, right? Why doesn't your blog work? Why isn't your podcast growing? Why won't your CEO's byline land where you wanted it to? Because content has been everybody's job and nobody's strategy. The org chart that was built for 2016, the playbook was never written down, and the budget still rewards the campaign you ran last quarter, not the audience you're building over the next 2 years. You can fix all of that, not in a week, not by hiring one person, not by buying another piece of marketing technology, but by rebuilding the operating model, by moving from operations to orchestration. Next week, we'll get into the part that most marketing leaders dread. If there's one thing that sends shivers down that more than change management, it's making the business case, the conversation, the one with the executive team, the one where we have to make this case that, yeah, this is a reorg, not a reorg, but it's change worth actually doing. The article version of this with the comparison tables, the 4 architectural moves, the 5 dimensions, it's all linked in this post. Meantime, it's your story. Orchestrate it well, and I'll see you next week.